So this is fascinating. Seem to have a very nice or neat dichotomy maybe here with accent and pronunciation. Accentism clearly is not universal, right? You can go anywhere and people can spot the accent. You can get caught.
Mhm.
But I'm sure it happened to you. And when I go to the US, we get past it very quickly. We have a good laugh, we have a drink, haha, and then have a nice conversation. It
Right.
is there with the pronunciation side. And you're kind of getting to the, is there some with these high value features? Is there any universality to that in terms of teaching your intelligibility? You mentioned changing the methodology with the low level learners, which I'm really curious about of what you changed. But certainly accentism, there's no universality. Is there any universality on the intelligibility side?
That's a good question, and I'm not sure how to answer it.
I just asked the
Um,
questions.
yeah, if you, it, we would have to have people who, my guess is that there is some universality. Um, so when a feature of the language has a high probability of causing confusion, then it becomes something that is more universal. So somebody who's learning Chinese has to get those tones. They just have to, because Chinese has a very simple syllable structure and it's got four tones, and so its syllables are pretty limited. Um, I think it's about 1,400 different syllables, which means they have a lot of homophones. And they're distinguished only by whether your voice goes up or down or stays level or, you know, dips down and then goes up. Um, and so that can confuse a lot of understanding, just like L and R in English. Um, and then when you get to other types of prosody, we learn this kind of stuff when we're very, very little, right? By 5 months old, kids have the rhythm of their native language,
Hmm.
have the rhythm, and and it helps us. But it also means that as we learn another language that has a different rhythm and melody, we don't notice it. We don't pay attention to it. We don't notice that it makes a difference in meaning. And so we do weird things with it.
What? Yeah,
Interesting.
I don't know if that may not have answered your question.
No, that's a great answer. That's a great answer. Leo has a question, but I want to circle back on the
no,
methodology
no. Let's go
changes
back. Let's
then.
go back to the methodology because
Yeah.
I'm also interested in the methodology. What before we jump into the methodology, because I like that you named it. You call it so basically we have low value and we have pronunciation features that are high value. That's the 20% as you named it. And you're
I would say,
and
yeah.
you're considering contrastive stress high value. What would be maybe a few other things that would be high value just so teachers know and they can take note of that and be like, "Oh, this is what we should be focusing on when teaching pronunciation."
Um, Let me stay with super segmentals because it's a little bit trickier. I think the difference between um, rising and falling intonation is high value, um, because we know that both rising and falling can be used with any grammatical structure.
Hmm.
They can be used with yes no questions or WH questions or statements or
Hmm.
phrases, and it makes a huge difference as to whether you hear those things as inviting a response or making an assertion. Um, so that's one. I think prominence is, in general, a high value thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so what word do you emphasize in a phrase? In English, we like that emphasized word to be kind of the last important word at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
phrase. Um, and that's just the way English sounds. But then once you know that, if you do something different, it carries meaning. So contrastive stress is a difference from the norm. Um, changing your emphasized syllable to something that is not at the end but is um, informationally important is important.
Mm-hmm.
Um, word stress, some word stress is important, and some doesn't matter at all, which is not very helpful. Teachers want to know, word stress is important, but um, so I'm in Iowa, which is a farming state, and um, we have these big machines that farmers use to pick
Yeah.
corn that are called combines. Um, and they have a different word that is used as a verb, which is combine.
Mm.
And so you would think this would make a big difference, but it doesn't seem to.
Hmm.
Um, if you hear somebody mispronounce combine as combine, you kind of, your brain hums.
Figures it out.
Yeah, it figures it out. Both words show up.
Yeah.
If somebody says that they need a permit instead of a permit, the brain just gets them both. So that doesn't seem to matter, even though it's everything in all the pronunciation books, it's there. But if somebody changes the vowels and stresses things wrong, then it kind of shuts the listener down. I have an example of this from nearly 40 years ago. I was listening to Wilga Rivers, who was an Australian ESL methodologist, and I was listening, and she was perfectly easy to understand until she talked about a corollary.
A what?
Corollary.
Yeah, no idea.
It was
Don't know that one.
it was
Don't
a
know-
it was corollary.
Oh.
Interesting.
Okay.
Coral.
Interesting.
But
Crawley.
it took me about 45 seconds to figure out what the word was. I had to actually write down on a piece of paper in front of me, CRLRY. And then I thought, oh, yeah, I've heard that British speakers and then Australian speakers do this. But I couldn't understand it. She had changed all the vowels from what I
Mm-hmm.
expected with that stress change. And that made a big difference.
So she was not intelligible.
She was not intelligible. Everything else she said was intelligible, but she got me on that one.
You
So
mentioned when I think you said the listeners tune out. Is that the phrase is that the feed?
I think
Sorry, go ahead.
go ahead.
I think it's thinking
No,
about
I think I said freeze.
freeze. Okay. Or like, is that the feedback that we're looking for? Like, I'm thinking of learners and students and thinking about like when they write something and someone submit and you read it and you give them the big red pen and you get feedback, right? And I'm thinking about pronunciation in the real world, so to speak, like what feedback, and this I think ties to everything that you've mentioned, like identity and just not wanting to be excluded or not wanting to be caught, as Leo felt in school. And sometimes in the real world, I imagine that when the others feel the person isn't intelligible, they tune out, but it's not obvious. They don't get a big red pen. They just what is that the feedback that they're looking for, or how does that work, do you think?
My students have described it a dozen times, or at least, as getting the look.
Just it sounds scary.
That when they're talking to someone and the person is not understanding them, they just kind of go into this look of, it's usually the eyebrows down and the eyes squinting, and they know something has gone wrong, and they're not sure what it is, but in terms of pronunciation, they know that something has gone wrong.
I'm thinking of my
It's like,
local Chinese restaurant. They just hand me the English menu. Stop trying.
Yeah.
Here's the English menu.
right, you should use one of those new phones that translates for you.
Ah,
Yeah,
oh, that's
exactly.
funny.
Yeah.
The look.
The
Okay.
look. I got a lot of the looks in Paris when I was trying to speak French. They would automatically switch to English. It was the look followed by,
Right,
"Do you
right.
speak
Yeah.
English?" And I said, "Yeah, I get it. You don't even want to try with me."
I hated the look in
Yeah,
Costa Rica when I lived there, and I was trying to speak Spanish, and they all just said, "Okay," and they just switched, and I was like, "No, I wanna try, I wanna like, I know I'm
Yeah.
bad, I get it, but humor me here," you know?
and and you need to be very brave to
Huh?
continue
Mhm.
in the language that you're working on when somebody else is rejecting you.
Mhm.